Hello everyone, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to go back into the anthology, the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. This is an anthology I've been reading for the past couple of months. I am finally finished with it, and I'm going to be talking about another story in this anthology today. The story that I am talking about today is called Scanners Live in Vain, and it's by Cordwainer Smith. Cordwainer Smith was an American science fiction writer. Cordwainer Smith is not his actual name, it's his pen name. I don't remember his pen name or his actual name, but he is way more famous for his pen name, Cordwainer Smith. This particular story is the first story that he published professionally, not including one he published in a high school paper. So really it's kind of his first major published story. It was published in 1950 in Fantasy magazine. The premise for this story is that humans cannot travel through space while conscious because of what he calls the great pain of space. So basically, humans have to be put into a state of artificial hibernation to be able to travel in space. But there is crew needed during space travel. So what this society has done is created what they call Habans. And Habermans are convicts who have gone through a surgical procedure that severs almost all of their sensory nerves. They specifically lose the sense of hearing, smell, and feeling. So they can't feel when they touch something, they can't hear, and they can't smell anything. They do have the ability to see, but other than that, they've been completely shut off from most of their senses. And the way that they take care of their bodies and make sure that they're not basically dying because they don't feel pain anymore is they have this instrument panel that has been set into their chest. And they are constantly scanning themselves to make sure that they are in good working order, that their organs are functioning. So yeah, this is what happens to convicts in this future story, and they pilot and crew spacecrafts where humans are under artificial hibernation in order to endure space travel. The way that these Habermans communicate is by writing on a tablet with an extended finger they have that's called a nail. Of course, the problem with this concept is leaving all of these convicted criminals awake while everybody else is asleep. So there's a group of people called scanners, and that's what this short novella is actually about, are these scanners. And they are people who voluntarily go through the exact same surgery that Habermans go through. They have to go through this in order to survive the great pain of space. They voluntarily go through the same procedure so that they can supervise the Habermans. They're kind of the captains and leaders of these space crews. And this is specifically about a scanner who's named Martell. Before I get into that, I'm sorry. Scanners are widely honored within society. They are considered the bravest heroes of all of society because they're willing to go through this surgery in order to make space travel possible. Okay, so that's kind of the ground situation. Ground situations in science fiction are always really complex because I think that's where a lot of the ideas come in. So world building at the beginning of things is always interesting. And really good science fiction, well, there's some great science fiction that starts with just world building, but I find that the science fiction that I'm drawn to just starts and throws you in and allows the world building to occur as the story is moving on. And this is one of those. We just jump into a situation that we do not understand, but it's brilliantly done. It's weird in the same way a lot of Philip K. Dick novels are weird. And this novella starts with a guy named Martell who is a scanner, and he's married, which is rare among scanners. I think he's the only scanner who's married, and we basically open up in his apartment with he and his wife, and are thrown into this situation through a close narrative distance to Martell, this scanner. We learn that he's lost most of his senses because of this really terrible surgery that he's had to go through. And he tries to speak with his wife, even though he knows she hates his voice when he tries to speak. She prefers that he writes on the pad because he can't hear his voice and has no control over his voice. And anyway, they're arguing about whether or not he should cranch again. And cranching, we learn later, they decide that he is going to cranch again. Cranching is it feels like a virus, not even a virus, a program. I don't really understand how cranching works because I don't think Smith really explains how cranching works. But basically what it does is allows him to experience humanness again. Basically, when he's cranching, he can hear, he can smell, and he can feel again. So it's this kind of vacation for scanners that they cranch. They bite down on a wire, and it allows them to feel like humans again. So he cranches, and it's going to last for 3 days, this cranching. And Smith beautifully describes... Well, I'll get into that in a minute. So he's cranching. His wife has records that release odors. Instead of music, they release odors. And she's very excited for him to smell this new odor record that she bought for when he cranches. And she plays this smell for him. And it is the smell of, I think, pork chops or lamb chops. It might be lamb chops. Anyway, it's cooking meat. This future society doesn't eat a lot of cooked meat. So this smell is very unique. And she's so excited to show it to him. But the minute he smells this cooked meat, it gives him a flashback to which is either a battle or a spacecraft crash, where people all around him are on fire and dying, and he's walking over all these people. As a scanner, he's able to kind of walk around through space, and basically it terrifies him. This flashback terrifies him, and she has to turn off this smell record so that he can try to get himself back into a good state. And while he's trying to do this, the phone rings, and it is the head of the scanners calling a meeting. And he says, "Hey, I'm cranched. I can't come to a meeting." And the head of the scanner says, "Usually that'd be normal, that you wouldn't come to a meeting because you're cranched, but you need to come to this meeting." So he goes to the meeting cranched, and he sees all of his other scanners because he's cranched, from a human perspective. He can hear them. And he can, and none of them can hear, of course, because they're not cranched like he is. But he can hear them and feel and smell them, and so on and so forth. And they have a meeting where it is announced that there is a scientist named Adam Stone who has come up with a procedure that will circumvent the great pain of space, which will basically make scanners and Habermans completely obsolete. And all the scanners in the room decide to take a vote on whether or not to kill this scientist, before his findings are made public so that they will not be obsolete. He has a really good friend named Chang, and he and Chang vote against killing this scientist, while all the other scanners vote for killing the scientist. And he decides to go rogue and try to stop this from occurring. I'm not going to give any more of the plot away from there. It is an incredible story, and you should absolutely read it. And I'm going to give 3 reasons or themes in this story that make it well worth the read. The first one is the prose. This Cordwainer Smith really blew me away with how incredible his prose were. But he deals specifically with what it would mean to be trapped in a body without being able to experience the senses except for the sense of sight. He explains it almost like a brain put into a computer, although that's not the case. He's still mainly human with a screen in his chest. And how isolated he feels. He feels dead. He describes himself as already dead a lot because he's a consciousness existing in what feels to him to be inert matter. He can't feel any part of his body, so to him his body is dead. And the prose is claustrophobic. It's terrifying how well he describes what this would feel like. He also deals with themes of PTSD, and I think he does an incredible job of this. And seeing as this was published in 1950, that is an early take on this. And of course, he doesn't call it PTSD because that term didn't exist yet. But I'm sure that he was familiar with the traumas of people coming back from war. I had to go check my research, and yes, Smith was in the military during World War II, and I'm sure because of that, he would be very familiar with the effects of the trauma of war, and he deals with that really strongly in this. When Martell smells the burning meat, and goes into a flashback, it is very vivid and described very directly. And because of this close psychic distance, we are there with them throughout the entire journey. I also really enjoyed the character Chang, who had a pretty strong part in this story. Cordwainer Smith was incredibly well-traveled, lived in Asia and Hawaii and all over the place. And I love early sci-fi that looks to the future and sees a lack of racism. I like that optimistic worldview when it comes to science fiction. That's why Star Trek is so fun. Even 60 Star Trek, which has racism, still was trying its hardest to not have racism. And that's the same with this. Chang is, number one, the best of all the scanners, and Martell discovers this in the meeting because he's cranched and is actually hearing and seeing the way that Chang is seeing and hearing Chang interact as a human would, and he realizes Chang is much better at controlling his face muscles and basically looking still human over all the other scanners. And that's because Chang practices really dedicatedly to looking as human as possible. And I thought that was really, really interesting. It is unfortunate that after the vote, Chang does not choose to help Martell stop this scanner uprising from happening. But I feel like Smith was really, truly trying to express a future equality and representation that we don't get to see often in literature from that era, and I found that really, really enjoyable. This is one of my favorite stories from the book. I would easily rank it an 8 out of 10. I'm sure that I will come back and talk about this book again in the future, but now I am done with it. I would like to rank this book overall as an anthology. I give this a 9 out of 10. If you're just trying to get into science fiction and you want to kind of see what the early years and the golden years were like in science fiction, this is a wonderful place to begin. It has so many classic novellas and short stories in it that really give you a quick lay of the land of science fiction from the early 30s all the way up to the invention of the Hugo Award in 65. I think it's the Hugo. So if you are looking for a science fiction anthology to read, which is a great way to read science fiction, this would be one that I would highly recommend. I give it a 9 out of 10 for science fiction anthologies. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this content, please give it a like. And if you like seeing this kind of content, we'll be doing more in the future. So go ahead and push that subscribe button. And thank you very much for watching.